All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a truly chilling piece of local folklore. We're going to break down a story that starts off as this eerie local legend, but it rapidly unravels into a terrifying sequence of targeted vengeance. We'll be looking closely at the timeline, the dark rituals, and the tragic lore of the Sati Astra to figure out exactly how a quiet, small village basically became the epicenter of an absolute nightmare.
It's a pretty provocative question, isn't it? Like, what actually happens when revenge goes beyond the grave? As you'll see, the horrifying events we're about to explore all stem from this dark, totally uncontrollable vengeance. It's kind of your classic cautionary tale about human grief crossing boundaries that should really never ever be crossed. So let's look at where it all began.
Moving right into our first chapter, Part 1, The Haunted Village Well. Now, this isn't just a spooky location. It's literally the geographical and supernatural epicenter for the whole shebang.
The source material establishes this sheer terror right from the jump. Picture this: a young man is walking home, and it's near midnight. He's already terrified, clutching his bag, just praying for a safe walk. And the text highlights two incredibly creepy sensory details. First, the haunting sound of anklets, or payal, just echoing in the dead of night. And then, a woman appearing in a veil, a gungat. Before the guy can even process what's happening, she reaches out and snaps his neck in a single devastating motion.
Now, the community's reaction here is super fascinating. That young man, he was actually the fifth brutal murder in just 2 months. That's absolute chaos. And, it's a common trope in folklore to try and appease a wrathful entity. So the terrified villagers did exactly that. They built a small temple right by the well, no idol inside though, offered daily food sacrifices, and put a strict ban on anyone going near it after sunset. They genuinely thought they were dealing with a divine force, the wrath of a local goddess, but they were entirely wrong.
Let's shift to our next section, Part 2, The Dark Awakening Ritual. Because this haunting, it wasn't some random supernatural glitch. It was deliberately engineered. We have to rewind the timeline by about 3 months, 2:30 in the morning, the classic witching hour. The source material puts a really heavy emphasis on this exact timestamp. 3 months prior to the height of all this terror, a woman named Maya sat completely alone in the pitch black by that very same well. Let's break down exactly what she was doing out there.
Okay, so this was a highly specific, totally macabre ritual. Maya sat out there in black clothing to blend into the night. She brought a rooster with its beak and limbs bound and sacrificed it with a sharp knife. Then it gets even darker. She actually used a human skull as a vessel for the blood, splashing it into a fire pit while chanting these dark awakening mantras. Basically, she demanded the spirit awaken to take revenge. And sure enough, out of the well, this veiled entity emerged, just waiting for Maya's command.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, Vengeance at 3 a.m. With the spirit awake and given its lethal orders, we see the terrifying execution of Maya's plan.
Listen, the source creates this incredible tension with a terrifying motif. It's exactly 3 a.m. The eldest brother of a specific local family, a man named Mongol, hears this relentless knocking. Half asleep, he goes and opens the door, and standing right there is the veiled woman. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows her veil back, and it reveals this horrifically rotted face with inverted, completely white eyes. Before Mongol can even slam the door shut, the entity grabs him, snaps his neck, and brutally mutilates his face.
If we look at the timeline, it reveals the systematic, methodical destruction of this particular household. Day 1, Mongol is killed. Then, exactly 13 days later, literally right after the morning rituals for Mongol are wrapping up, his brother Rajesh hears that exact same 3 a.m. knock, and he meets the exact same gruesome fate. The very next day, their mother Radha is found dead in the courtyard, her face mutilated in the same way. The entire bloodline is wiped out in basically 2 weeks.
Let's move to Part 4, The Uncontrollable Spirit. Because here's where the narrative completely shifts from calculated revenge to absolute unbridled panic.
The core conflict hits hard when we compare Maya's actual intentions to the gruesome reality of what's happening. She only wanted those 2 specific brothers dead. That was it. But the ghost's actions went way, way beyond that. Maya watches in absolute horror as a totally random, innocent man riding his bicycle past the well hears the anklets and is just violently torn apart by the spirit. The entity isn't an assassin anymore. It's become this uncontrollable force of indiscriminate slaughter.
So obviously, driven by massive guilt and terror, Maya rushes back to the well. She performs a second ritual, essentially begging this thing to stop. She's crying out, "Your revenge is complete! You killed the ones you needed to! Just leave the village alone!" But, well, the supernatural doesn't really negotiate. Out of nowhere, a violent wind blows out Maya's ceremonial lamp, and the angry spirit appears right in front of her, making it crystal clear that she will not be commanded anymore.
So you're probably wondering, why those two brothers? Why the well? Let's dive into Section 5, the tragic truth revealed.
To understand this, we have to look back 4 months prior to the village panic. Maya's sister, Manju, had just been widowed. While she was deep in grief, locked away in her room, her two brothers-in-law, Mangal and Rajesh, broke her door down. They had this horrific, twisted logic that since their brother was dead, they somehow had a right to her. Cornered and absolutely terrified, Manju realized her only escape from their horrific assault was to run for her life.
And this tragedy right here reveals the real meaning behind that folklore term we discussed earlier. Manju sprinted straight to the village well and threw herself in to escape her attackers, choosing death over dishonor. That is the true, incredibly grim origin of this Satyasura. It was never some ancient goddess, it was Maya's sister, Manju, driven to a tragic suicide. Maya summoned her own sister spirit from that watery grave just to punish the men who drove her to it.
Which brings us to the chilling climax. Part 6, the final victim. The boundaries between the creator and the monster dissolve entirely.
Even after Maya's desperate pleas for her sister's soul to rest, the bloodlust just couldn't be contained. It's 1:30 in the morning. Maya is sitting in her home trembling. And then she hears it, that unmistakable, dread-inducing knock at her own door. She slowly opens it, only to find the ghastly spirit of her sister standing right there on her doorstep.
Maya is literally begging for her life. She's reminding the ghost, "I'm the one who summoned you. I got you justice." But the lore in this source dictates a terrifying rule, captured perfectly in this quote. After death, a soul belongs to no one. Her sister's spirit no longer recognized any earthly bonds, no love, no loyalty. In one swift, brutal motion, the ghost snaps Maya's neck, killing the very person who brought her back to this world.
In the aftermath, the terrified villagers just packed up and fled. They completely abandoned their homes to the ghost in the red veil. And it leaves us with the ultimate moral of the story. Vengeance is a dark, uncontrollable force that, in the end, consumes the avenger themselves. You absolutely cannot play with forces beyond the grave without paying the ultimate price. Now, if you enjoyed diving into this explainer, please make sure to subscribe, like, and share Silvera, Nix, and Toon Tales. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to leave you with one final, unsettling thought to chew on. If a soul truly belongs to no one after death, who is ultimately to blame when the dead return?